You paid good money for that coffee. So why does it taste like burnt disappointment? Maybe you added sugar to survive it. Maybe you drowned it in milk and hoped for the best. Or maybe you just forced yourself to drink it anyway because, hey, coffee is expensive now and you are not wasting it. But here's the thing. Coffee isn't supposed to taste painfully bitter. A good cup of coffee can taste smooth, sweet, chocolatey, nutty, fruity, or even creamy. And here's what most people never realize. The problem is almost never the coffee itself. It's the way it's being brewed. Today we're going to walk through the most common reasons coffee turns bitter, what's actually happening inside your cup when things go wrong, and the simple fixes that can completely transform your morning. No expensive equipment, no barista training, no complicated techniques. Sometimes changing just one small thing makes your coffee taste dramatically better. And once you know what to look for, you'll never have to suffer through a bad cup again. Before we get into the fixes, it's worth understanding what's actually going on. Because here's something most people don't know. Bitterness itself isn't the enemy. Coffee naturally has a little bitterness, especially darker roasts. And that slight bitterness actually helps balance sweetness and acidity. Without any bitterness at all, coffee tastes flat, watery, and kind of hollow. The real problem is when bitterness completely takes over the cup. You know that feeling? A dry aftertaste? A burnt flavor? A sharp harshness that lingers long after the last sip and makes you question your life choices. That unpleasant experience has a name: over-extraction. And here's the simplest way to understand it. Think about making tea. Steep it for the right amount of time and it tastes smooth, balanced, and pleasant. Leave the bag in too long and suddenly it turns bitter, astringent, and unpleasant. Coffee works exactly the same way. When water meets coffee grounds, it starts extracting flavors in a specific order. The good stuff comes first: sweetness, fruitiness, and balanced acidity. But if extraction goes on too long, water starts pulling out the harsher compounds that nobody actually wants in their cup. So the goal is always to stop at the right moment. And there are several common mistakes that push extraction too far without people even realizing it. Let's go through them one by one. The first one surprises almost everyone. Most people never think to question their water temperature, but it might be the single biggest reason your coffee tastes harsh. Here's what typically happens. The kettle finishes boiling, and most people immediately pour that boiling water straight onto the coffee grounds. It seems logical. Hot water makes coffee, right? But the problem is that boiling water is actually too hot for brewing. It extracts coffee way too aggressively, rushing through the good flavors and pulling out bitter compounds before the cup ever has a chance to taste balanced. This is especially noticeable with darker roast beans, which are already more sensitive to heat. The ideal brewing temperature is around 90 to 96 degrees Celsius, which is just slightly below boiling. And the fix is almost embarrassingly simple. After your kettle finishes boiling, just wait. 30 seconds. That's it. Let the water cool slightly before you pour it over the grounds. That one tiny adjustment alone can make a noticeable difference in how smooth your coffee tastes. It costs nothing, takes no extra effort, and honestly, it works. This is actually one of the quiet reasons why cafe coffee often tastes better than coffee made at home. Professional baristas carefully control water temperature because they know even a small difference, just a few degrees, can completely change what ends up in your cup.
Here's another one that surprises people. Your grind size might be quietly ruining your coffee every single morning, and you'd never even think to blame it. Here's why it matters so much. Coffee grounds that are too fine have a much larger surface area in contact with the water. That means extraction happens faster and more aggressively than it should. The result is coffee that tastes bitter, muddy, and way too intense. But here's the part most people don't realize. Different brewing methods actually require completely different grind sizes. French press needs coarse grounds that look almost chunky. Pour over works best with a medium grind, somewhere in the middle.
Espresso uses a very fine grind, almost like powder. Using the wrong grind size for your method is like cooking food at the wrong temperature. Even the best ingredients can turn out bad when the conditions are off. So, if your coffee consistently tastes bitter and you haven't changed your grind in a while, try going slightly coarser next time. The improvement can be immediate and honestly, kind of shocking, like suddenly tasting your coffee properly for the first time. Professional baristas adjust grind size constantly throughout the day, depending on the beans, the humidity in the room, and even small shifts in the brewing equipment. At home, even moving just one small step coarser can completely change your cup for the better. This one is straightforward, but surprisingly easy to overlook. The longer coffee stays in contact with water, the more gets extracted, and too much extraction always leads to bitterness. Every brewing method has its own sweet spot for time. French press is usually around 4 minutes. Pour over is around 3 minutes. Espresso is somewhere between 25 and 30 seconds. Go even slightly over those windows, and bitterness starts taking over the flavor. A really common issue with home pour-overs is pouring water too slowly or having grounds that are too fine, which causes water to drain through much more slowly than it should. By the time the brew is finally done, the coffee is already over-extracted and bitter before it even hits the cup. So next time your coffee tastes harsh, pay attention to how long the actual brewing process is taking. Shortening it by even 30 seconds can sometimes completely fix the problem. It's a small window, but it makes a big difference. Here's something that might genuinely change the way you think about coffee. A lot of people assume that all coffee naturally tastes very bitter. But that's mostly a roast level issue, not a coffee issue. Dark roast beans go through a much longer roasting process, which breaks down the natural sugars and creates those smoky, bold, intense flavors that a lot of people associate with coffee in general. If dark roasts are all you've ever tried, it completely makes sense that coffee feels harsh and overwhelming. But medium roasts and lighter roasts are a completely different experience. Because they spend less time in the roaster, they actually preserve the natural flavors that exist inside the coffee bean itself. Things like chocolate, caramel, hazelnut, berries, honey, and citrus. Coffee can genuinely taste like those things without adding anything to it at all. And honestly, a huge number of people who say they don't like coffee have only ever experienced very dark roasted beans. If bitterness has always been a struggle for you, try a medium roast next time, and look for bags that mention flavor notes like caramel, brown sugar, milk chocolate, or hazelnut. It might genuinely feel like drinking coffee for the very first time. Here's one final thing that most people never think about. Your coffee beans might already be past their best before you even begin brewing. After coffee is roasted, it slowly loses its flavor over time, and the sweetness always fades first. What gets left behind are dull, flat, harsh flavors that make the coffee taste bitter, even when the brewing process is technically correct. Old coffee doesn't just taste stale, it actually tastes more bitter because all the pleasant compounds that would balance it out have already disappeared. For the best flavor, coffee is ideally consumed within a few weeks of the roast date, and storage makes a bigger difference than most people expect. Coffee absorbs moisture, heat, light, and odors from its surroundings incredibly easily, including smells from your fridge, which is actually one of the worst places to store it. Keep your coffee in an airtight container, away from direct sunlight at room temperature. Fresh beans won't fix a broken brewing process on their own, but they give you a much stronger starting point before you even touch the kettle. So, let's bring everything together. If your coffee tastes bitter tomorrow morning, here are the fixes to try right away. First, let your water cool for 30 seconds after boiling before you pour. Second, try grinding slightly coarser than you normally would. Third, if your brew is taking too long, find a way to speed it up a little. Fourth, if the coffee still tastes too concentrated and strong, add a small splash more water. And fifth, if you've been drinking very dark roasts for a while, pick up a medium roast and see what changes. The most important thing to remember is that fixing coffee almost never requires dramatic changes. It's always the small adjustments that matter most. And once you finally taste a cup that's smooth, balanced, and naturally sweet without adding anything to it, it becomes genuinely hard to go back to anything less. Bitter coffee isn't a sign that you're bad at making coffee. It just means something in the brewing process is slightly out of balance, and most of the time, the fix is simpler than you'd expect. So, next time your cup tastes harsh and unpleasant, don't just reach for the sugar. Try adjusting one variable at a time. Cooler water, coarser grind, shorter brew time. Sometimes that's genuinely all it takes to go from a cup you tolerate to a cup you actually look forward to. Because here's the thing about coffee. Every single cup is a small experiment, and when everything finally clicks together and the flavors are smooth and balanced and just right, even a simple homemade coffee can feel like something genuinely worth waking up for.
If you found this helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. There's a lot more where this came from, and trust me, your morning cup is about to get a whole lot better.